Welcome back to Breakfast from Bahrain. My name is Bob Babbitt. We are brought to you by Babbittville Radio. Our next guest, 9th place in Kona, and really a versatile year for Mary Beth Ellis. Mary Beth, you're talking about 9th in Kona, and then also did really, really well, 51.50, and at 70.3 Worlds. So you're talking about full 140.6, 70.3, 51.50. But I'm sure being versatile doesn't really make you very excited.
No, I mean, the real goal of the year was to perform well in Kona at the Ironman World Championships, and I fell short. We were just talking about it. I put myself in this position to fight for the win and just didn't execute on race day. I ran very poorly, and you can't do that at a World Championship and expect to be in the top 3.
Well, what's fascinating about it to me is, I mean, look at your between swim and bike. I think you're right around 5 hours, and you're right where you want to be in a 3:20 or so marathon off the bike. But that's what's so cool about the racing and how the depth of the women's field now is you can't afford to have one weak link on that particular day, right? You've got to be so on all day long.
Yeah, there's really no room for error in the women's field. We're getting more and more like the men, where it's really tightening up and it's becoming exciting racing, which is fun. But yeah, on race day, if you make any mistakes, you go from 3rd to 15th in the blink of an eye.
So when you look at a race like this, where you've got 51.50 people who you've obviously raced against, 70.3 people who you've raced against, and Ironman folks, Iron Distance folks, all on the same canvas, how does a race like this play out?
I think this race will be really interesting. I think one of the biggest factors is the time of year, December. You just are going to see a mix of people in different types of shape. I think some of the athletes that have had injury-plagued seasons might come in a bit fresher and ready to race. So it'll be interesting to see. Some of the short course athletes, I think, will have the speed, and this course isn't too challenging. I would say it'll be a little more like a Clearwater type course, where it could come down to a run race, but they've instituted, Challenge has done an amazing job listening to pros, and they've instituted a 20-meter draft zone, which will actually then take it back, where I think some of us longer distance girls might have a shot to kind of break it up on the bike.
And the other side is, I think, isn't there like a 30-minute gap between the women pros and the age group?
Yeah, I don't know if that would have had that much of a factor in this race, just because I think the level's so high. I don't think there's many women that'll be swimming slow enough that even if it was only 10 minutes, they would get wrapped up in the men. But yeah, the more distance we can have, and I think as pros we all really appreciate Challenge and the fact that they're listening to us and trying to give us those gaps to maintain a fair race for the women, which, I mean, that's all we want, is our chance to go out there and race clean and see who's the best on the day.
So what's fascinating to me is your background, the fact that you ran, you swam, you've come back from a pretty horrific injury when you had that crash. Talk a little bit about just the coming back from an injury like that, when your body is so compromised and you want to rehab and get better, but you're also a world-class athlete. You've got to not just rehab, you've got to get back to be the best in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us athletes deal with injury. It's just a question of when and what the injury is. In some ways, crashes are a little easier because it's such an acute situation that you really are forced to stop and get the surgery if you need it, or do the rehab, whereas sometimes the overuse injuries are even worse. Last year I also had a tear in my plantar fascia, and that was harder just because you weren't sure when you could come back and what to do. Whereas at least an acute a situation, you're forced to take the rest and do the rehab, and you don't try to train through it.
Right. So when was this always in your plan to do this race, or usually people finish Kona in October and it's like, okay, I'm done?
I wanted to come here. Just because I really want to support Challenge and what they're doing here, and really trying to grow the sport and take it to the next level for us professionals. So if I was healthy, I knew I would try to come and race here and give it my best shot. Am I in the shape of my life? Maybe not, but I've trained pretty hard since Kona. We've done some different things, just trying to elevate myself to a level where I can be even better next year. So I'm not sure how the day will go tomorrow, but I do think I've set myself up for a good 2015. So I think in all, it's not a bad time of year to get out there and race and see where I'm at.
So when was that crash?
I crashed in Cozumel in September 2013.
So really a crash like that and recovery from that, that's, we think about coming back the following. And really, if that was in 2014 was real just trying to get back to where you were before the crash.
I think it's partly that, and then partly just I'd had a big string of Ironmans. I'd done, 11, 12 Ironmans in this 2.5 years. And I just think my body this year is it's caught up with me a bit. I'm no spring chicken, and doing that many Ironmans in that short a period of time, I just think your body, is gonna force you to take some downtime or just slow you down a bit to try to recover from all that.
So when you look at the women's field here, and you know these women better than anybody, who do you look at as someone who's going to be a factor, obviously, besides yourself?
Wow, I don't even know where to start. That's this field. Yeah, I mean, there's so many girls from the short distance specialists. I mean, you have the Commonwealth Games reigning champion here. Yeah. You have the Olympic silver medalist. And then you go up to the 70.3 specialists. You have Annabelle Luxford, yes. Mel, who's still sort of a 70.3 specialist, two-time world champion. And obviously Jody Swallow finished second this year at 70.3 Worlds. And then on the Ironman side, you can't look past Rinny and Rachel and Carolyn. It's like the who's who of triathlon on the women's side is here.
Do you enjoy that, coming to races where the best people are? I mean, it's a lot of times people are like, it'd be nice to go somewhere where I can just know that I'm top 3 just by signing up because the fields aren't that deep. But coming to a race like this where you know that, some people are in exhibition mode, but other people are really, really ready to race. But I'm guessing someone like yourself, you like the fact that it's a deep field and a challenging race.
Yeah, I love the really challenging races and the deep fields. And this year I've had sort of mediocre results, and part of it is, except for 2 races, I did only championship events. I did the Latin American 70.3 championships, the Asia Pacific Ironman championships, the North America 70.3 championships, the European Ironman championships, and then did High V, the 5150 Worlds, 70.3 Worlds, and Kona. Wow. So I really this year wanted to chase the deep field and get a true measuring stick of where I was.
Which is pretty scary coming off that injury.
Yeah. That's the thing, though, is that I'd won quite a few races, but, I felt like I definitely had some that were light fields and easier fields, and you can kind of relax. And it's a different feeling than it is in Kona, where you're never going to be able to relax. You're never going to be able to go into a race at the World Championship level and not have people all around you pushing you all day. So I wanted to simulate that feeling before I felt it. Yeah. At the end of the year. For
someone who's been involved with this for a while, the women's field has changed significantly, where it used to be that there weren't that many races with deep fields, but you just went through 8 or 10 races where the fields are deep across the board. Is that something that you've been part of that, watching that growth? That's got to be a cool place to be.
Yeah, I think it's really great, and I think both Challenge and Ironman with WTC are really trying to get good fields together, and that's only going to help elevate the sport. If we can have exciting races, we can bring in the media and bring in the fans and really try to grow the entire sport.
And having $100K for first for the men and the women, and having $500,000, that seems a little bit of a sign of respect.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with what Challenge has done here in Bahrain. Besides the prize purse, they really have invited the top level athletes and taken care of us so that, we can come here this time of year and just know that regardless of what happens, at least we're not leaving here with money out of our pockets. It's nice as a professional to come to a race and know that there's only upside.
Right. There's no risk. You're not going there going, okay, if I spend 5 nights at hotel and air and meals, that if I don't get first, second, or third, I'm pretty much out of pocket.
Yeah, it's a lot of there's definitely even Ironmans where if you don't win, it's a loss, which is kind of scary as a professional. You need to weigh your options, and at the end of the day, we need to make our living from the sport, and so it's nice when the bodies of Challenge and WTC are trying to elevate the sport and get us more prize money and exposure so that, we can help our sponsors and just grow all together.
Love it. Mary Beth, thanks so much for taking time. And now, what are you bench pressing now?
About 250.
Shut up. Huddle, you hear that? She's benching 250, buddy. You better get back in the gym. Mary Beth Ellis has been our guest. Again, this is Breakfast from Bahrain. My name is Bob Babbitt. Check us out on iTunes at Babbittville Radio. Mary Beth Ellis does while she's doing bench and squats. Hold on, everyone. We'll be right back.
ما أدري كل هذا